Hey everybody, if you're watching this live, I'm going to go away now for about 5 minutes. Just wait for people to come into the stream, mate. Wait for all the streams to propagate. I'm live, I think, everywhere now. I think I finally sorted out the Rockfin thing, and I'm live on Rockfin as well. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes. I'll play some music for you. You can grab a coffee. I'm going to do the same, and I'll be back in 5 minutes, and hopefully there'll be more people watching then, because obviously you got to wait for the notifications first. So yeah, I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Go and grab yourself a coffee.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
We'll stop that, shall we? Hi everyone, how are you? Hi in the chat. Hi, who cares? And a dingo ate me baby, and RSFO and Anthony. How are you all? I am live right now on Twitter, on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Rockfin. I have finally figured out what I was doing wrong with the Rockfin feed and why it wasn't going live. And yeah, welcome to you all. I hope you're having a wonderful day. How are you? Hi, good dog. Hi, Titch. Yeah, I've just got the one video for you tonight that I want to cover, the one subject. So without further ado, I think we're going to get into it. You may have seen from my video that I dropped yesterday I dropped it on YouTube. The Keir Starmer video. Keir Starmer was heckled. Nobody punched him, anything like that. Nobody hit him. Nobody jumped on him. Nobody did anything like that. Nobody hurt him. His life wasn't in danger. But according to the BBC, he was, quote, set upon by a group of, idiots. And they said it was all about Keir Starmer. And Boris Johnson saying that Keir Starmer had refused to prosecute Jimmy Savile. Okay. And this is what all of the media have run with. That it's this group that set upon, quote, set upon Keir Starmer. It was because Boris had said what he'd said the week before in that Keir Starmer had failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile. First of all, technically that's true. But we need to get into why he brought up the journalist angle as well. And I'm convinced he was talking about Julian Assange, because Sir Keir was heavily involved in Julian Assange's, what happened when he was taken into the embassy. I will explain in this stream. Now, I'm going to try and be cutting a video from this stream, so you will see me look down and go through my script and what have you, and I may repeat some sentences, of which I'm sorry. I'm trying to cut a standalone video as well for TikTok. The TikTok that I did about the video on Keir Starmer, by the way, got took down for hate speech. I have no idea why. I have a claiming. So you've probably seen footage of Keir Starmer being bundled into the back of a car the day before yesterday. Now, the media all ran with that it was because of what Boris had said about Keir Starmer not prosecuting Jimmy Savile. Well, here's some footage from Resistance GB, 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Look at this, take a listen. See what you think the crowd of people, the mob, as the BBC put it, who had set upon Sir Keir. Let's see what they were saying and what they were actually angry about. Here you go. Oh. Let's take that back to the beginning because I didn't have the sound on.
What happened to the working man, Mr. Starmer? What about the working class? Is this a Labour Party? Protecting people. Or the party of the elites? Why have your party allowed our Magna Carta, our rights, our common law to be ignored? Why did you go after Julian Assange? Why did you go after a journalist, Mr. Starmer? Why did you go after Julian Assange? Mr. Starmer, why did you target a journalist? Traitor! Don't take the box. Don't take the project. Fucking traitor! Why did you go after Julian Assange? Why did you go after journalists? Get back! Feet to the pigs! Don't fucking push me, you fucking thug! Don't fucking touch me!
Move back now. Move back now.
Don't assault me!
Put your hands on her again.
She puts her hands on me again! I'm
you put your hands on her, you're getting
Do not assault me!
Do not touch me!
Feet
Do
to
not
the pigs! I'm using my feet to the pigs powers!
Move your hand.
I am
Move your
moving.
hand off.
Get
one
your
now.
hand off
Move
of
your
me.
hand off. One now. Move your hand.
So there's the 2-minute 20-second clip. What do you think that was all about? You know, I heard shouts of traitor, of what have you done about the working man? What about the working man? Is the Labour Party the party of the working man or the party of the elites? What about the Magna Carta? What have you done to the Magna Carta? And obviously, the person holding the camera there from Resistance GB, over and over is shouting, what about Julian Assange? So, what's the connection between Keir Starmer and Julian Assange? This is what we're going to have to look at, because I know a lot of people are going to be asking this question. Why were they talking about Julian Assange and Keir Starmer? Well, bring this up. Keir Starmer, or Sir Keir Starmer, was head of the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, when Julian Assange sought asylum within the Ecuadorian embassy in 2012. He was the DPP. He was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He directed the prosecutor as to who to prosecute on behalf of the public. That was what his job was. So technically, what Boris said was correct, even though he may not have had any direct involvement. He may not have had any direct involvement in the Assange thing as well. However, with such a high-profile case and with him being the head of the Crown Prosecution Service at the time, it's highly unlikely. So Keir Starmer was head of the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, when Julian sought asylum within the Ecuadorian embassy. That was when a European... We'll start that again. So Sir Keir Starmer was head of the CPS. He was the Director of Public Prosecutions when Julian Assange sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy after Sweden signed the European arrest warrant. Now, not only did the CPS admit that key emails were deleted between Sweden and the CPS at that time. You can see here, this is a report from The Guardian in 2017, building on brilliant work by Stefania Maurizia and her Freedom of Information Act request. But you can see here The Guardian say the Crown Prosecution Service is facing embarrassment after admitting it destroyed key emails relating to the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who is holed up in Ecuador's London embassy fighting extradition. Obviously, this is a few years ago. He's in Belmarsh now. But Keir Starmer was head of the CPS while this happened. Email exchanges between the CPS and its Swedish counterparts over the high-profile case were deleted after the lawyer at the UK retired in 2014. The CPS, responding to questions from The Guardian, denied there were any legal implications of the data loss for an Assange case if it were to come to court in the future. We don't know about that. But adding to the intrigue, as you can say up there, I'll read the whole thing of this, shall I? The destruction of potentially sensitive and revealing information comes ahead of a tribunal hearing in London last week. Obviously, this is 2017. Adding to the intrigue, it emerged the CPS lawyer involved had unaccountably advised the Swedes in 2010 or 2011 not to visit London to interview Assange. An interview that at the time could have prevented a long-running embassy standoff. Now, another way of saying could have prevented a long-running embassy standoff is to say could have prevented 7 years of arbitrary detention and psychological torture. That's not my words, that's the words of the United Nations specialist on torture, Niels Melzer. Now, it's really weird, isn't it, that the CPS would deny Sweden the opportunity to interview Julian in the embassy where he sought asylum. And remember, he sought asylum because, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Assange declined to travel to Sweden at the time when this investigation started, expressing fear that it was a ruse that could have paved the way for his extradition to the United States. The lawyers offered a compromise in which Sweden's investigators could interview him in person in London or by a video link, but the Swedish authorities did not take up the offer at the time. That's really weird, isn't it? If they want this case, this investigation cleared up, you would think that they would take any opportunity to interview Julian. He was open to interview. In fact, the Swedish investigators did interview him later on in the embassy, years later. And the case was dropped and then reopened again, etc., etc. But at the time, this could have been cleared up very, very quickly. Now, of course, he sought asylum because, like you say, he said it was a ruse that could pave the way to his extradition to the United States. And guess what happened? As soon as he was arrested on that charge of skipping bail after Ecuador basically revoked his citizenship after after billions in loans from the IMF, I might add. As soon as he was arrested, literally, I think days later, we saw this indictment. They unsealed the indictment on the single charge of a conspiracy to hack with a hacker password. Chelsea Manning. Now, as it turns out, he couldn't hack the password in question, and actually what they were talking about was hacking a password, I think, to cover Chelsea's tracks, and any journalist would advise their source to be doing the same thing. But needless to say, that's the original indictment that was unsealed as soon as Julian was dragged out of the embassy and arrested. That's exactly what he said was going to happen. That's exactly what he said this investigation in Sweden was about. And then obviously, not long afterwards, we had 17 extra charges in a superseding indictment put on, and then a month after that, more charges in another superseding indictment. So everything Julian said all along that was going to happen, if he came out of the embassy, happened. It was absolutely true all along again. There were never any charges in Sweden. It's important to remember that. In fact, one of the contacts within the Ecuadorian embassy, one of Julian's contacts, Fidel Narvaez, said the Swedish case was opened and closed more times than a fridge, the Swedish investigation rather. And always at times when it looked like things were going well for Julian, or at times when it aided the United States cause. Like I say, there were never any charges in Sweden, and the case was closed pretty much as soon as Julian was in custody. Neither woman ever accused him of rape. Ever. There were never any charges brought forward. Ever. Anytime you hear Sweden and charges mentioned, that person, that outlet is lying to you. Possibly on purpose, especially if it's the BBC, because they make that mistake over and over and over again. Now, Swedish prosecutor Marianne Nye, who issued the European arrest warrant, Not only did she issue it in a way that the rules had to be changed on future issuances of the European arrest warrant, but Nils Melzer here, who is the special rapporteur on torture, he says the CPS wanted to prevent Sweden from abandoning the case at all costs, obviously ensuring Julian's arbitrary detention continued. This is an email between the CPS and Marianne Nye, the Swedish prosecutor, with the CPS saying, don't you dare get cold feet, when there was talk of the case being dropped. This is why Julian Assange, this is why Keir Starmer was being heckled by that Julian Assange supporter yesterday. No supporters. Wasn't about Jimmy Savile. At least not that clip, was it? And if you're going to show the full context, you have to talk about the Julian Assange thing as well, but obviously they don't want to talk about that. This ensured, this email from the CPS to the Swedish prosecutors, while Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions, head of the CPS, he surely would have been heavily involved in this, ensured Julian Assange was arbitrarily detained for a further, 6 years, 7 years, and ensured his psychological torture. That's the connection. That's the opposition in this country. Supposed opposition. That's supposedly the party of the working class. Going after a journalist. On a ruse to get him into custody so they can unseal an indictment in America and extradite him, where he faces 175 years in prison for the crime of journalism, for proving war criminals were war criminals, for doing the job of a journalist. That's who Keir Starmer goes after. Meanwhile, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell got the numbers of half the elite in this country, seemingly. I don't remember Sir Keir going after any of them, do you? I don't remember Sir Keir going after Jimmy Savile either. Now people are saying, oh, well, there's no proof that he didn't, and he listen, he was Director of Public Prosecutions, and I've heard a tape that the BBC released 20 years later, I think, of John Lydon from the Sex Pistols talking about how the BBC were covering up for Jimmy Savile in the 70s. If the elites in this country knew about paedophiles in the 70s, I'm damn sure Keir Starmer, as head of the DPP, knew about it in the 2010s. But that's not the point I'm trying to make here. There's no way I'm going to feel bad for Starmer, even if there's a mob going after him because of what Boris Johnson said about Jimmy Savile. What? So even if Boris Johnson lies about Starmer, even if it's a lie and he had nothing to do with Jimmy Savile at all, and there's nothing he could have done, and now he's being persecuted, how do you think Julian Assange feels after all the lies that have been told about him, Keir? People getting upset because, oh, Boris lied about Sir Keir and now he's being mobbed. How do you think Julian feels? The person that Sir Keir ensured was arbitrarily detained, or his office rather, ensured was arbitrarily detained for 7 years before being dragged out of his asylum in an act of fascism on home soil in the centre of London, and now imprisoned in Belmarsh with murderers and rapists and terrorists for over 1,000 days. I want to point out something to you. And it's horrible, this is. I didn't have the tab set up, but it's going to probably take too much. Yeah, it's all right. It's coming up now. Julian spent over 1,000 days, over 3 years, in that prison. Just think of that's Belmarsh prison. That's Belmarsh prison is our version of Guantanamo Bay. It's the worst prison in the country, the most secure prison in the country. And if you don't understand what it's like to be in there, I want to give you a taster. Just an audio of what it's like in that hellhole. This is just 100 seconds. Imagine having to spend over 1,000 days in that prison on remand. He's not there having committed any crime. He's not there because a judge has said, yeah, you've committed a crime, you've got to go to Belmarsh. He's there on remand because the United States want to extradite him for his journalistic work. This is what it sounds like in that hellhole. That's sensory torture. Imagine over 1,000 days of that having committed no crime whatsoever. Imagine it. With your nearest cellmates being rapists and murderers and terrorists. I want to ask Sir Keir why he extended Julian's torture and arbitrary detention. That journalist yesterday with the camera was asking the same thing. They're not answering. They're not answering. That's because they're guilty. They're guilty of torturing journalists on behalf of America. Because, you know, let's face it, he proved they were war criminals. What else could Julian Assange be proving right now? It's curious, isn't it? What else over the last few years after he was dragged out? What else could he be talking about? If you want to know the truth about anything, the NHS being sold off to the US, is that what you care about the most, the NHS? Free Julian Assange. You want to know the truth about what foreign wars and war crimes? Free Julian Assange. If you want to know the truth about corporate greed and corporate corruption, free Julian Assange. If you want to know which politicians are corrupt and on the take, free Julian Assange. If you want a free and fair democracy, free Julian Assange. If you want a media that you can actually trust, that gives you the receipts instead of just propaganda from the elite, free Julian Assange. And if you want to put an end to a journalist's psychological torture and detention in one of the world's worst hellholes, certainly this country's, then you need to free Julian Assange. You need to do everything you can to free him. If he is extradited to the United States, the truth is lost forever. You won't know who the corrupt are. You won't have a clue. And you'll be cheering on the torture of those who are oppressed. Whilst backing the oppressors who are doing it. That's why Sir Keir has a lot to answer for with regards to Julian Assange's torture and his incarceration. I want to know why. Don't you? Right, I think I can cut a video from that. Okay. I think that's everything. I think I've covered everything. Oh no, there's something else I wanted to talk about. Yeah. So this I'm about to show you is the UK judiciary, or sort of like the, no, not sort of like the UK. This is the Julian Assange Hall of Shame. This is what it is. These are all the people that have questions to answer. Questions to answer for. Oh, let's see if we can. Better. Obviously, we've got Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump was... People thought he loved WikiLeaks, do you remember? Do you remember how people are like, Julian Assange, I don't like Julian Assange because he was, he was pushing Donald Trump. He helped Donald Trump during the 2016 election. Okay, so if Julian Assange was a friend of Donald Trump, why didn't Donald Trump pardon him? Question number one. Why didn't Donald Trump pardon Julian Assange if Julian Assange was such a friend to him and got him elected in 2016? Ask yourself that question. And then ask, Mike Pompeo, who was Secretary of State under Trump, when Trump didn't pardon him, and Julian was, grabbed from the embassy and incarcerated, it was Donald Trump who brought in superseding indictments, remember? It doesn't make sense, does it, for that So Assange is Trump's friend, Trump and Assange and the Russians. That's why he got elected. But why didn't he pardon him? Why did he go after him? Why did Mike Pompeo, as we know through reporting from the Yahoo, why did he instruct his CIA to draw up sketches to kidnap or even kill Julian Assange in the centre of London? Lenin Moreno, Ecuadorian president, he sold Julian Assange to the United States for an IMF loan. They withdrew his citizenship. You remember Rafael Correa, the previous president, had given Julian citizenship. Lenin Moreno revoked that under pressure from the United States and the United Kingdom. Alan Duncan, who is a 40-year-old friend, by the way, a 40-year-long friend of the judge who overturned the extradition denial. Jeremy Hunt said Julian Assange is no hero and in hiding when he was the Foreign Secretary. No hero, really? If Julian Assange isn't a hero, do you think we would know anything about, Guantanamo Bay torture, Abu Ghraib, Iraq, Afghanistan war crimes, etc., etc.? How many wars would we be in right now if it wasn't for Julian Assange? If they'd got away with all the... Well, they did get away with all the war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq, didn't they? But if we didn't know about it, how many more wars would they have got it in? Right now, they're trying to get us into another one with Russia over the Ukraine. It's presumably because, the Afghanistan war with the Taliban went so well. Sajid Javid signed off the United States extradition request as Home Secretary. Why do our politicians have such fealty to America? Why? You keep hearing, don't you, in the press, and you keep hearing politicians in this country talk about the special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. Well, do you know what? I listen to a lot of American news. I have to, as a part of my job. In America, they never refer to it as a special relationship. I've never heard them refer to it as a special relationship. We're the only ones who do refer to that relationship as special. So why is it whenever the United States say bend over, we start grabbing our ankles? The United States, who, didn't kill Jeffrey Epstein. Allegedly. Why do we have fealty to the United States of America? Why? Do you remember the whole Anne Secoulis incident? Lady Emma Arbuthnot still pulling legal strings despite the conflict of interest. Yes, her husband was in WikiLeaks because of his shares and dealings, in defence contractors and defence contracts in the country. Vanessa Barreta, pick unconfirmed. We've never seen a picture of her. We don't know whether that's her. This is the district judge who Lady Arbuthnot appointed, who originally denied extradition to the United States. Remember, it was Alan Duncan's friend and 40-year-long friend that overturned that decision. But Vanessa Barreta denied extradition because Julian, his life would be in danger as a result of the harsh conditions in the US prison system. That's the reason she denied it. However, she didn't call on the CIA to give any assurances. And for that reason, it went to the High Court to be overturned. So she's got a part to play in this as well, even though she denied the extradition. Keir Starmer, a human rights lawyer. I forgot all about that. A human rights lawyer extending the torture and arbitrary detention of a journalist. A human rights lawyer extends the arbitrary detention and psychological torture of a journalist. Those are Nils Meltzer's words, not mine. And he, a human rights lawyer, as I've just pointed out, extended that torture and that arbitrary detention. How can he say he's a human rights lawyer? On what side? For the prosecution? Priti Patel, Home Secretary, has ignored doctors' fears about Julian Assange's health, and as we know, on the morning of one of his hearings last year, he had a stroke. And let's not forget, he's in a COVID-infested prison and he's got underlying health conditions with his lungs. Lucy Fraser, obviously the Prisons and Probations MP, who ignores letters. Marianne Nye, this is the Swedish prosecutor, who just, procrastinated on everything just to try and keep it stringing along as possible. The one who didn't close the case when they were going to, after Sir Keir's CPS sent her an email saying, don't you dare get cold feet. Scott Morrison, the Australian PM. If you're Australian, and I know I've got some Australian viewers in the chat, I'll come to you in a bit. If you're Australian, what do you think of him? I remember seeing him in an interview with Donald Trump, and I might actually even bring up the picture. I might even try and bring up the picture, actually. Because, talk about cook. There's a picture of him in the Oval Office. Trying to... Oh, no, not in the Oval Office, in one of the press meetings. And yeah, it was that meeting. But there's a picture of him and he's looking down like that. He's got his hands. And it's a perfect picture. Because imagine this. Imagine this is the direct equivalent. The Australian politicians, the Australian Prime Minister has just bent over for the United States. I want you to imagine, right, a journalist, let's say George Monbiot, right, of The Guardian. We'll say somebody the Liberals like. George Monbiot goes to Germany and works with the outlet Der Spiegel to expose crimes that America have been doing against Iraqis, Afghanistan. Let's say George Monbiot gets a leak, he goes to work with the Der Spiegel. And while there, some other country whips up a charge of something, and George Monbiot runs into an embassy in, let's say, the Ecuadorian embassy in Berlin. A British citizen. And the United States try and go after him that way. What do you think the United Kingdom would do? What do you think people in the United Kingdom would do? They would be screaming, get your hands off, right? Right? Surely we would. At least I hope so. Well, that's the direct equivalent of what's happened here. And Scott Morrison has done nothing. The the Australian government have literally just bent over to the Americans and just said, Americans are too big and powerful. Marisa Payne, the Australian Foreign Minister, says doesn't want to intervene or interfere whilst one of their own journalists is being tortured psychologically in the worst prison in the United Kingdom for proving people in the United States were committing crimes of war. If you're Australian, I'm mad enough at the United Kingdom for what they've done to this Australian guy. If you're Australian, I can't imagine how furious you should be. I can't imagine how they've kept this quiet over in Australia. I can't imagine how they've let these people just take the path of least resistance and act like a cuck in front of a fascist when he meets them. Robert Buckland, the Justice Secretary, brushed off the COVID threat from Julian Assange in Belmarsh. Remember that? And the Belmarsh Governor, Rob Davis. That is the Assange Hall of Fame. The Hall of Shame, rather. All of those people need to, in my opinion, they're the people who need to be facing charges. They're the people who need to be answering questions. They're the people who need to be cross-examined in a court of law. Not a journalist for proving war criminals are war criminals. Every single one of them has got questions they need to answer for. Every single one of them. And every single time you see any of them sit down with any journalist or in the company of any journalist, and that journalist does not ask about Julian Assange, I want to make something very clear to you. That journalist is not a journalist. That journalist is a propagandist, and you should not be listening to a damn word that they say. Especially if they're on the BBC or ITV or Channel 4 or any other, or Sky or any other outlets that won't say a goddamn thing about one of their own being tortured psychologically for a decade on their own shores. It's no wonder the journalists never turn up to Assange hearings or anything. It's no wonder. Because the last time they did, I remember they got screamed at. I was the one doing the screaming, but well, one of them anyway. But it's no wonder they never turn up anymore. They can't handle it. These politicians, they can't handle the questions. That's why they have to bundle them in the back of the police car and say, oh, they were set upon by a mob. Journalists were asking them questions. That's what it was. And this is why they're trying to silence people as well. Make no mistake about it. All right, everybody. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm sorry it's a short one, but yeah, there were other stuff I want to talk to. I want to talk about the Amnesty International findings. I'll show that in a live show later on in the week, probably. Because I want to delve into that, because Keir Starmer is part of that as well. He was part of the witch hunt. He's obviously took over since Corbyn was ousted from the Labour Party in a witch hunt. He's got answers. He's got questions to answer, that man has. My first question would be, which country do you serve, sir? Because the evidence I've seen doesn't make it look like you serve this one. And those chants in that video of traitor, they didn't come from nowhere. They were as a direct result of this. Take care, everybody. Yeah, I've just seen 2 times say check Craig Murray's blog. I will be talking extensively about Craig Murray's findings on the Labour Party and the EHRC report. That is the article that I will be talking about 2 times. So you're on the ball, son. Well done. Thanks very much, everybody. Please go to the website, find out ways you can support me, PayPal, etc. There's a Bitcoin address. I think all the links are down there as well. If you can, support independent media. Please do everything you can to free Julian Assange. And if you can as well, write to your politician and ask them what they're going to be doing about Amnesty International's finding that Israel is an apartheid state and committing crimes against humanity. Maybe you want to email your politician and say, yeah, why are we arming this country? Why are we Why are we arming an apartheid state? Why are we selling them weapons? Because if we're doing that, then we're committing a crime, aren't we? Because we've just found out that this state is committing crimes against humanity. Therefore, us arming them is a crime in itself. I'll be talking about that in the next stream. Take care, everybody. Love you all. Support independent media, and as always, free Julian Assange. Take care.